A good horror film gets under your skin. An exceptional one ruins your whole day. Seeing Barbarian in theaters, I was locked into my seat, constantly on the edge of screaming at the screen, desperate to understand what is going on. How can these insane revelations add up to a coherent premise? I have to know. And when the twisted truth hits 2/3 in, man, it's so messed up. True story. I was once stuck in a closet filming writer-director Zach Kreger dressed as the Green Lantern for a YouTube short I produced in 2011. Then we shot in Chinatown without a permit and had to bail before the cops came. Good times. Can't wait to see his new flick, Weapons. Barbarian is very unsettling, top-tier psychological horror, not just because of the unhinged imagery, but because it taps into a trope that resonates deep within our psyche. The fear that beneath every pristine, inviting surface, be it a picturesque middle-class community, a storybook meet-cute, or a sunny California drive, lurks hidden brutality. It's the same pattern that defines some of our most culturally impactful films. In Blue Velvet, the innocence of a North Carolina lumber town harbors a hidden world of drugs and sadistic violence. In The Stepford Wives, the perfect image of suburban marriage obscures a world of manipulation and female subjugation. And on the less serious side, in Hot Fuzz, the idyllic small-town unity of rural England masks a horrific undercurrent of ritualistic murder. What makes Barbarian a compelling installment in this tradition is that it's set against the backdrop of a cultural movement focused on dragging hidden brutalities into the light. Cancel culture is in full swing, characters openly discuss power imbalances between the genders, and one carefully choreographs his actions to gesture his awareness of and distance from that kind of behavior. But just because we've uncovered the ugliness, does that mean we can actually root it out? Is the predatory AJ a symptom of the same social pathology that produced the monstrous Frank? And if so, what exactly is this pathology? How does it operate? And why does it keep returning in new forms? Well, to find out, we're gonna have to dive deep into Kreger's Deranged debut, pay a visit to two of the greatest filmmakers to ever live, and talk about my favorite piece of Cold War propaganda. Let's dive in. But first, a quick recap. It's a rainy night in a rundown Detroit neighborhood where Tess pulls up to an Airbnb she rented, only to discover it's already occupied by a mysterious man named Keith. The situation is sus, no doubt, but Keith's charm disarms her skepticism, and with nowhere else to go, she decides to stay the night. But there's still something not quite right. Later, while alone, Tess stumbles upon a hidden door in the basement, behind which lies a series of underground tunnels and a room with only a bed, a bucket, a camera, and a bloody handprint. Keith returns, and Tess tries to convince him they need to dip, but he insists on investigating. Faint cries for help force Tess back into the tunnels, and when she finds Keith, he's immediately murdered by something. Cut to AJ Gilbride, the ultimate Hollywood chode, whose carefree drive is abruptly interrupted by a call from his management team, who inform him he's been accused of sexual assault and is now full-on cancelled. Desperate to liquidate his assets, AJ returns home to Detroit and attempts to sell a rental property he owns, the very same house Tess and Keith were staying in. AJ finds their belongings and even the hidden tunnels, but doesn't think much of it. He just whips out the measuring tape and starts adding square footage to the listing until he too is attacked by the monster and thrown into a pit with Tess. A flashback reveals that decades earlier, Frank, the house's original owner, had kidnapped, violated, and brutalized women in the underground tunnels, fathering deformed inbred offspring, including the monstrous Mother. Tess and AJ manage to escape the house, but Mother follows them to a water tower where AJ throws Tess off in order to save himself. Tess survives, Mother kills AJ, and Tess ends Mother's life with a perhaps merciful shot to the head. The end. There's a lot to admire about Barbarian, but I think its most impressive achievement is in that first act, where the film makes us feel what it will later explore thematically, that we expect brutality to hide beneath the mask of civility. Here, the film builds tension by leveraging our cultural fluency of gender dynamics in horror films and uses it against us, misdirecting our skepticism towards Keith, the masterful red herring. You could even argue the beginning is conceived in conversation with the foundational psychological horror film, Hitchcock's Psycho. Similar to Tess, Janet arrives alone to the vacant Bates Motel on a stormy night where she meets Norman, the opposite of an obvious threat. He's good-looking, polite, and charming in his awkwardness, but just give it some time and Norman reveals a hidden perversion that will lead to Janet's murder. As horror audiences and as culturally trained readers of gender dynamics, we are immediately suspicious of this situation. It's dark, raining, Tess just fled a toxic relationship with a man, then a single light comes on in a supposedly vacant home. Every element spells danger. However, unlike Norman in Psycho, Keith is also keenly aware of these tropes that make her and us suspicious.
Would you mind pulling up your reservation confirmation just so I can see it?
In case I'm some kind of weirdo who's broken in here to sleep?
After he brings the receipts to back up his story, Keith begins to telegraph his awareness of and commitment to avoiding any hint of controlling male behavior.
I don't think you should be sitting out there by yourself this late. Look, obviously you do whatever you want.
He insists on taking the couch,
But there's no way I'm sleeping in the bedroom while a young lady is sleeping on the couch.
waits to open the wine so Tess knows it hasn't been tampered with,
I thought you wouldn't want any if you didn't see me open it.
apologizes on behalf of all men,
There's a lot of bad dudes out there, and it sucks.
and even shows his vulnerable side.
Why is it always the girls who get their hearts ripped out?
Girls can rip. Trust me.
And yet, despite his objectively good behavior, nothing he says eases the tension. It only builds. Something has to be wrong. The genius of this setup is that it acts as a kind of thematic overture. It proves that we expect brutality to be hidden, whether it's beneath the meek mama's boy cuteness of Norman Bates or the feminist progressive attitude of Keith. Because turns out there is hidden violence, not beneath Keith's progressive script, but burrowed deep within the structure of the house, where Frank has been abducting and abusing women for decades. Now, when I say the violence is embedded in the structure of the house, the term structure is key to what I think the film is going for. The house functions as a visual metaphor, suggesting that violence and exploitation aren't deviations from the norm, they're ingrained in the very architecture of society, a notion even baked into the title's double meaning. Barbarian isn't just descriptive of Frank or AJ, but also the setting, as the house resides on Barbary Street.
This is 476 Barbary, right?
476 Barbary.
Just as a resident of Houston is a Houstonian, someone living on Barbary Street is a barbarian. The wordplay situates the horror not just within individuals, but within a setting. The house on Barbary Street, the last one still standing among the ruins, becomes a symbol of a social order propped up by a hidden economy of exploiting women. But what does that mean? Is that just a fancy way of saying a history of violence leaves an impact? Well, not exactly. It's more about how these sordid transgressions actually serve a function. They can prop up a social order and keep people ideologically invested in maintaining it. And in order to understand how, we're gonna have to dive deep into my favorite philosopher, Slavoj Žižek's theory of ideology, who I legit haven't talked about for like 11 videos, so I deserve some credit. But before we get into Žižek, I want to tell you guys about this video sponsor, Mott & Bow's Slim Mercer jeans. I'm the kind of guy who wears jeans pretty much every day, so pairs that are too stiff, too tight, or fall apart after a few washes are a no-go. They gotta be simple, durable, good-looking, and most important, comfortable. Mott & Bow's Slim Mercer jeans, the ultimate business casual pants, have got it all. They're super lightweight and breathable, making them ideal for summer, but versatile enough to wear year-round. They feel broken in from day one and come in a variety of colors. Plus, they offer multiple inseam options for better fit and added comfort. Whether I'm working, enjoying the great outdoors, or hanging out with the fam, they're comfortable and stylish. And with over 40 years of denim experience, these jeans are built to last. These Slim Mercer jeans are a must-have in every guy's wardrobe. Premium comfort, timeless style, and built to last. Get yours today at mottandbow.com/JaredBauer and get 20% off automatically at checkout. Get yours today before your size runs out. And now, back to the show. The most basic formula for Žižek's theory is ideology equals political economy plus libidinal economy. Put simply, belief structures are not only informed by what keeps the economy humming, but also what keeps us emotionally and psychologically invested. See, a social order can't succeed with only the official rules. It also has to offer secret kernels of subversive enjoyment that buy people off and make them want to believe in it. Zizek calls this inherent transgression, the idea that small, unofficial breaks from the rules are not a threat to the system, but actually written into its very functioning. So a depressing example would be violence against blacks in the Jim Crow South. While lynching was technically illegal, the public and ritualistic breaking of that law created a perverse sense of communal enjoyment among white citizens. In a twisted way, these acts of brutality weren't just tolerated, they were crucial to maintaining identification within the community and perpetuating the social order. For a less depressing example, Zizek talks about the depiction of military culture in Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. The cohesion of the Corps is not achieved only through rigid discipline, but through a network of obscene jokes, crotch grabbing, and hazing.
I want to slip my tube stick into your sister.
Gunnery Sergeant Hartman mandates this behavior because these transgressive enjoyments, these shared violations of official decorum,
I don't know, but I've been told. Eskimo is mighty cold. Eskimo is mighty cold.
Keep the soldiers hooked on the Corps, psychologically invested in advancing the goals of a war they might not otherwise agree with. And in the male-dominated society that Frank, the last standing relic of the Detroit industrial era, represents, the exploitation of women served a similar function. Even as official laws and norms outwardly condemned anything less than equality and respect, the secret illicit enjoyment of domination over women provided an unspoken psychological glue that kept men invested in the social order. This is the secret that Barbarian unearths. It's not just that Frank is a violent psychopath, it's that he derives a perverse enjoyment from his actions, recording and reliving his atrocities. As a heightened symbol of society's ideological architecture, Frank's dark enjoyment, hidden beneath the surface, is what keeps his house standing amidst the ruins of Detroit's former industrial heart.
You plan on staying?
I'm not going anywhere.
It's an exaggeration of what we might call the Mad Men cultural logic. The official rule was all about the loyalty to the nuclear family, the leave it to beaver ideal, smiling housewife, 2.5 kids, the dutiful breadwinner coming home to the castle, you know, the official ideology. But the unofficial enjoyment often came from exploiting women. For example, secretaries were routinely harassed, propositioned, or coerced into sexual relationships, a hidden economy of degrading women that kept men libidinally satisfied.
Turn around a second.
This illicit activity didn't challenge the system, it was the hidden reward for remaining in it. Now, when you're digging into the hidden elements of an ideology, sometimes the clearest example comes straight from the propaganda itself. Billy Wilder's Cold War comedy 1, 2, 3, one of my all-time favorites, is explicitly about building up the fantasy of American capitalism, even its dark underside. I love this movie, 5 stars all day on my Letterboxd. James Cagney plays C.R. McNamara, a Coca-Cola exec stationed in West Berlin, overseeing the triumphant spread of capitalism across Europe, while the bumbling Soviets scramble to keep up and poorly hide their envy of the West's success. Family man McNamara has a casual, almost routine affair with his secretary, and later, that same secretary is treated as a bargaining chip in a deal with the Russians. They get her in exchange for freeing a prisoner in East Germany. The message of the film isn't just that capitalism provides a better functioning system, cars that don't fall apart or soft drinks that don't taste like ass. It also provides better enjoyment, more titillating transgressions. At one point, one of the goofy Russians quips that he's all too eager to get rid of his nagging wife and mother-in-law.
But if I defect, you know what they will do to my family? They will line them up against the wall and shoot them. My wife and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law. Comrades, let's do it.
The losers are stuck with family life devoid of that extra enjoyment. The winners get the idyllic family and the side pleasures. 1, 2, 3 doesn't just sell the material triumphs of Western capitalism, but the inherent transgressions, the little breaks from the official rules that keep people hooked on the system. This movie is so good, I really can't recommend it enough. Anyway, back to Barbarian. Yes, the objectification of women depicted in 1, 2, 3 or Mad Men is a far cry from the nightmare fuel unfolding beneath the house on Barbary, but it's an intensification of the same logic. Just as the old male-dominated economic order, of which industrial-era Detroit was once a symbol, depended on transgressions that kept people psychologically invested, Frank and AJ's house stands as the last surviving monument to that world. Like the order it represents, the house endures not just through what is visible on the surface, but through the secret, perverse enjoyments buried beneath it. But what should we make of the decay surrounding Frank's house? Do the ruins of this once thriving community suggest that, while Frank is the holdout, the barbarism of that ideological order is dead? Has the Airbnb economy fundamentally changed social dynamics, or is it just more of the same? Well, it depends on how you look at it. The case can definitely be made that barbarism is still going strong. Enter AJ Gilbride, one of Justin Long's best roles. While it's tempting to interpret AJ's ownership of the house as equating him with Frank, I'd argue it's less about condemning individual bad actors and more about showing how the same underlying logic, the transgressions hidden beneath the surface, persists and adapts. AJ's a good guy actor in the streets, a manipulative predator in the sheets. For him, being coercive with women is an unspoken perk of being a publicly appreciated figure. Just as propositioning your secretary was once a tacit part of the old male-dominated social contract,
A secretary is not a toy. No, my boy, not a toy.
leveraging fame to justify sexual aggression is simply another version of the same dynamic. AJ thinks he's innocent not because he denies what happened, but because in his mind, he was participating in a sanctioned transgression, an opportunity for enjoyment the system quietly offers, even as it officially condemns it. On the other hand, you could argue the film suggests that this particular brand of male power is genuinely decaying. On an obvious level, unlike the Don Drapers or McNamara's of previous eras, AJ's actions do not go unpunished. His life and career collapse. But beyond that, the film formally seems to relish in dismantling traditional masculine tropes. While it teases us with the prospect of domineering male violence, turns out the monster is actually a coddling maternal figure. One could consider Keith's dismissal of Tess's fears as an example of mansplaining that leads to Tess's imprisonment and his head getting splattered against a wall. When AJ is captured, he's far from the selfless male hero. It's actually Tess who's brave enough to re-enter the tunnels and save AJ. He mostly just whines like a bitch and at a crucial moment resorts to self-serving cowardice. In the end, Mother, the product of decades of gendered abuse, dismembers AJ. It's the revenge of the feminine. And considering how well the film works, maybe times really are a-changin'. New economy, new gender relations, new cultural tropes, new ideology that no longer silently rewards barbaric behavior. Right? Well, maybe. Because while a cultural movement pushing for accountability may be noble, it doesn't erase the underlying psychological function of these transgressions. Let's go back to Keith, the anti-AJ. Yeah, turns out he really was a swell guy, but nevertheless, these scenes are tense not just because we're well read on horror films, but because we're always skeptical of people who are too perfectly aligned with the official ideology. And today, instead of the loyal family man, the new official model becomes the trustworthy male ally, and we're no less suspicious of the horrors this might be hiding, because barbarism can persist even within an ideology about rooting out barbarism. On this channel, we've often talked about capitalism's incredible ability to co-opt dissent. Once something threatens the system just flattens it into a safe, marketable image and sells it right back to us. Well, the same goes for ideology. Even when a cultural movement shines a light on bad behavior, that exposure doesn't necessarily dismantle the role those actions played in sustaining the system. It can just become a new mask, a new way to access power. Zizek points out that even supposedly progressive movements offer their own hidden kernels of enjoyment, the thrill of callouts, the dogpiling, the rush of moral superiority. Every ideology, even one aimed at liberation, has its own libidinal economy, its own secret ways of leveraging people's dark side to keep them invested. Barbarian is an exceptional film, not only because it's absolutely deranged, but because its social messaging achieves something really rare. Making movies that try to take on culture war topics is so hard. There are really only a few of them that do it with any sense of grace, but I think Barbarian is one of them. It inverts time-tested tropes while still keeping the edge and insanity. It judges bad people without feeling like a finger-wagging lecture. It doesn't preach or indulge in self-congratulatory narratives about how enlightened we all are now, nor does it trivialize the real progress that has occurred. Because the truth is, when progress happens, it's often not obvious. It's not always easy to tell when we're actually overcoming past brutalities, or when we're just putting a newer, shinier mask on the same old barbarity. Hey, y'all, thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out the Slim Mercer jeans at mottonbow.com/JaredBauer for 20% off at checkout. Also, be sure to subscribe, because next time I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm investigating the dark world of Eyes Wide Shut truthers. Hope you guys are having a great start of the summer, and I'll see you next time. Peace.